welcome back to part 5 of our Game of the Decade series, in which we go through the 2010s year by year to find the best game of each one, before coming back to debate which of the 10 nominees are the true Game of the Decade. And this time is 2014's turn. The 5 participating GameXplain members each have 3.5 minutes to make their case for what they believe the best game of that year is, and then they'll have to defend it for the same amount of time in the interrogation round. Once everyone's presented and defended their game, we'll all vote. And that includes you too, as we're counting our lovely fan base as a 6th GameXplain member. Just use the link in the description below to make your voice heard. And we'll announce the results at the beginning of the next year's video. And speaking of which, congratulations to The Last of Us for just barely taking the crown as our nomination for 2013's Game of the Decade. And with that, let's get to our 2014 Game of the Decade argument. Take it away, Derek.
Alright, Game of the Year 2014, I'm going to just show you how right I am and just bewitch you with the pure knowledge that I put out there and make you, understand why I should always be right. And we should just go with my Game of the Years for each of the decades, or each decade. So, yeah, we're good there. Because my Game of the Year for 2014 is Bayonetta 2. It is a superb sequel that fixes a lot of the issues of the first game while making it just plain fun as hell. It is stylish action refined, and it looks at what was lacking in the original Bayonetta and truly improves upon it. There was those QTEs that just drove everybody nuts because if you failed them, it was an instant death, and it just took away from the action. Yeah, it might have looked cool, but you had to focus on it so much you couldn't really enjoy the action. And they make you in the middle of the action at all times, in full control, and it still looks amazing. In addition, it just ramps up the action throughout. Compare the opening of the original Bayonetta, which took about 15 minutes after the actual cutscene for you to actually get started, and then in this one you're fighting on jets, you're fighting on trains, you're fighting your own dragon. It is insane and wonderful. Plus you're fighting both the forces of heaven and hell. It mixes up the kind of enemies you're fighting. It's just wonderful. I love it to death, and it really changes up how you play. Plus, it has combat that's both fun and rewarding. It's super easy to pick up and play. You don't need to have a breadth of knowledge for this. You can just mash buttons and still have fun. In fact, they have a mode dedicated to that where you just mash the button and you can still enjoy yourself. It's really easy to do that, but they also encourage you to play a little better because of witch time and how if you dodge at the last moment, you have more time to hit enemies while it's slowed down and really do that. It makes it so much more fun, and it also builds up your Umbran climax meter, which rather than just finishers, it allows you to bring out these huge attacks in the middle of combat and fight enemies like this that are just super impressive. It also is filled with fantastic boss battles. Like again, the bombastic opening where Bayonetta has to fight her own summoning, and it just feels like you're going up this tower, you're going higher and higher, and it's just intense. Even against the Lumen Sage that pops up, there's some really close fights that really push me to the edge, and I loved it to death. And then there's also a mid-flight boss with the coolest Star Fox Easter egg, admittedly better than Star Fox Zero, where if you're wearing the Star Fox costume, you transform into the R-Wing and it has all the abilities, and that is amazing. Even the base part of that, even without it, is still great, but it makes it all the better because of that Easter egg. And then there's Bayonetta herself. It's the same cool confidence, coupled with a bit more emotional punch thanks to her concern for her friend Jean and just everything that happens from that. With a much better hairstyle. Look at that. That's crap. Who wants to look like that? That's stupid. Look at this. This is short, sexy, looks great. And there's so much variety. It's not just combat. You can explore, you can find challenge rooms, there's mech combat, there's surfing, there's aerial combat, even multiplayer that you can play with everybody else. And if you haven't played Bayonetta, it's on the Switch. You can actually get both the games right off the bat and play them both, but Bayonetta 2 is clearly superior and by far my game of 2014.
Nicely stated.
All right, you ready to be grilled over Bayonetta 2?
I believe so. Let's do it.
All right, let's get to it. My first question, Derek, is why do we never make a video about that amazing Star Fox Easter egg?
Because I don't think I realized it, because I'm one of those that actually don't like the first time I play, I don't like to use all the bonus costumes because it kind of takes me out of the story to have that kind of thing. But it's great as an extra to play through again and again when you're doing the other ones. And I didn't realize it until it was too late, and we missed the ball on that one. So I apologize, Andre.
Derek, so I really enjoyed Bayonetta 1, but what would you say to someone like me who, I know I've heard Bayonetta 2 is a lot better, but I feel like I've had my fill. So can you sell Bayonetta 2 on someone who feels like they've seen what they need to with the first game?
Because there's a lot of things in here that you haven't seen. You have new enemies with the whole denizens of hell that you're fighting through. You're surfing on this giant wave. You have this aerial combat. You get a mech in this and get its own combos and stuff that just are crazy with what you can do, and it kind of pulls a bit here and there from the original Bayonetta, kind of winks and nods, but it always makes it better and more fun. And it's just like, okay, you enjoyed that, you'll enjoy this even more.
You're explaining a lot of over-the-top stuff. Does that ever get exhausting, and how do they pace out the action?
They pace out the action by having it be short and sweet. You're gonna get into a lot of fights, but there's exploration in the middle where you're trying to find like expansions to her magic and her health, stuff like that. And there's challenge rooms that give you bite-sized bits of action that sort of expand upon the combos and things like that. I didn't even mention in my presentation that they teach you how to fight in the load screens, where you can get just a good idea. Like, it makes the load screens actually interesting. But yeah, there's exploration in between, and most of the actual fights take less than a minute to go through. So it's quick and peppy throughout the entire thing.
Peppy, because of the Star Fox connection. I get it.
Exactly. Thank you.
What would you recommend about this game to someone who doesn't normally find action games to be that exciting, like the combat to be repetitive and kind of button mashy? What would you say to someone who typically finds games of that sort to not be engaging?
I can see the issue there because, you can button mash here and mostly get it taken care of, and, that could be an issue. But if you find yourself, like, if you're like that and you get overwhelmed or don't like it, try to step back and give yourself a challenge. Don't button mash. Learn the combos, and I think you'll find yourself actually enjoying the game way more rather than just, like, pounding the buttons and, oh, cool things are happening. When you learn how the combos actually work and are set up, I think it's way more satisfying and way more fun. But it's still good for those entry-level players.
Is Loki a good character?
He's fine. He has an attitude and whatnot, and he gets better as it goes along, but it's just, you're there for Bayonetta. And a couple of the side characters. Enzo is great. I'm blanking on the other ones, but yeah, the guy who runs the Gates of Hell, he's a Smash Brothers trophy.
Rodan.
He's always fun. Rodan. There's, good characters here. I don't know if Loki's one of the top ones.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention 30 seconds. It's like 10 seconds now. My bad.
I mean, yes, you got any more to come at me, I'm good.
Is this the best game in the genre?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd say it's up there. It's definitely up there.
Wow.
It's like between this and Devil May Cry 3.
Well, I think that wraps it up. Nice job, Derek.
Thank you.
Defending Bayonetta 2. All right, cool. Well, am I up
That's
next,
right.
I believe?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe so.
All right.
All right. Here we go. Game of the Decade 2014, an upside down argument. This is a happy cow. He's not the only happy cow. There are lots of happy cows. Why are these cows so happy? It's because they are in an amazing game, being Mario Kart 8. Mario Kart 8 is Mario Kart in its purest form. There are no gimmicks here, only refinements. It has the largest roster of any game of the series. It has the tightest controls to the point that if you make a mistake, you only have yourself to blame. And they introduced an amazing anti-gravity mechanic that lends itself to some of the best courses in Mario Kart history. Let's go through some examples. Shy Guy Falls. This is a fresh new course in which you race up and down waterfalls. It is super epic and super refreshing and is just a lot of fun. Next, example 2. An airport, a completely unique setting that we've never seen in Mario Kart before, in which you're racing up and down active runways while dodging airplanes as they're taking off or coming for a landing. Again, it's something we've never seen in a kart racing game before, to my knowledge. Next, Mount Wario, which might be the most epic course ever produced across any game series ever, in which you're racing down a incredibly lengthy one-track course that's basically built in 3 different segments, and it doesn't really matter what's going on. You're guaranteed a good time. It always comes down to the wire, it feels like, in this one, and it doesn't get much better than Mount Wario. This game is beautiful across the board. Take this amazing recreation of Rainbow Road from Mario Kart 64. It is something that we couldn't even imagine back in the day, and they updated it brilliantly, and every track has been produced up to this level of visual fidelity. This was not only one of the best looking games on the Wii U, probably one of the best looking games of its generation, and is still one of the best looking games on the Switch! How impressive is that? But there's still one more thing. Blue shells suck! They're the worst! No one likes them, they suck to get hit by, it's not even that fun to get, because it never benefits you in the place if you're in a place low enough to get a blue shell. Blue shells are pretty lame across the board. However, Mario Kart 8, it realized this, and introduced the Super Horn, which rocks! It allows you to destroy blue shells for the first time in Mario Kart history. And not only that, it adds an important risk versus reward mechanic. Because while it's effective against blue shells, that's pretty much all it's really effective against, leaving you vulnerable to the rear to say like red shells or green shells, pretty much any other shell but a blue shell. So it asks the question of whether you should save it for a potential blue shell or get rid of it and try to get something better that can defend you better in the short term. It's a great item and makes Mario Kart 8 or makes Mario Kart better for it. This is not only the best kart racing game of the Wii U, but probably the generation, or even the decade. As you can see here, I put over 500 hours into it. I suspect if all of you look at your playtime, including all of you at home, you'll have a very similar playtime. So, or at least relative to the other games. So, in conclusion, all these happy cows cannot be wrong. I rest my case. I'll take no further questions.
Well, tough luck. You got to be grilled.
All right, fine. We'll open it up to the Q&A round.
Is this better than Double Dash, though?
Did Double Dash come out this decade, John?
Is it better than Double Dash, yes or no?
It's not. No, it's not. It's not better than Double Dash. However, as I said already, it's Mario Kart in its purest form. So I will concede, Double Dash, it's a bit of an outlier. It's a bit of an odd one. So if you just want pure Mario Kart action, it doesn't get better than Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. If you want, however, something beyond typical Mario Kart action, then yes, Double Dash is where it's at. Clearly.
Alright, Andre, you talked about the Super Horn and how great it is, except I rarely get it when I'm in first place. Instead, I get coins, and I think it can be argued that the item balancing in this game is kind of poor. What do you say to that?
That is kind of like the inherent downside to Mario Kart, is if you're in first place, the items are almost always lame. And I agree, the coins are a bit of a bummer. But I think they are there to introduce some balance to it, because to offset the fact that you can now defend against blue shells, the trade-off is you're potentially vulnerable a little bit more often, in that if you get rid of your defensive item, there's a good chance you're going to get coins the next time around. So while coins can be frustrating to get, I think there is an argument to be made for their necessity as an item in order to make sure races are still fluid in terms of position or relative positioning. Otherwise, first place would just dominate. It can just block everything, including blue shells. So.
All right, Andre, I have two things I'd like you to defend. First, we all know that battle mode is a huge part of multiplayer in Mario Kart, and Mario Kart 8 completely screwed that up so hard. Secondly, the way they redesigned Rainbow Road 64, you don't even hear the full song. Defend those things, please.
I mean, Ash, first off, we both know you're when it comes to Mario Kart, you're pretty good at it. You're not my level of good, but you're pretty good. So it's only your fault that you're beating your Rainbow Road fast enough they can't hear the whole track. That's That's entirely on you.
Wait.
As for battle mode. Okay, let's get real here. This has not been a core tenet of the series in, a couple of decades? They've been screwing this up consistently since Mario Kart 64. So the fact that Mario Kart 8 only continued what is now a decades-long tradition, I can't really hold it against it, and I will offer as a counterpoint, it's the only Mario Kart which can go on an aerial bombing run in battle mode. And that's gotta be worth something, so...
All right, 10 seconds. Sorry, I was so engaged in your answer that I didn't hit.
Is the roster good, Andre?
The roster is fine. I'll put it that way. I won't defend every character, but there's enough here that there's one for everyone.
All right.
Nice. Steve, I believe you're up next, sir.
Oh, God. Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah. So, my pick for 2014 Game of the Year is Fantasy Life for the 3DS. So, I personally have a very, very deep affection for this game. And I decided, instead of just offering y'all my opinion, that I would ask the experts. So I rounded up these 4 folks: Imran Khan from Kinda Funny, formerly Game Informer, and Tina Amini, Tom Marks, and Zach Ryan from IGN. Here's what they had to say about Fantasy Life. I've never played it. So that is a huge injustice that I'm seeking to correct by nominating Fantasy Life for Game of the Year. That's why this makes me sad. Fantasy Life is a true open world game where you can be anything. So if you want to fight, you can fight. If you want to be a pacifist, you can live a completely peaceful life. It combines the best parts of Animal Crossing and Zelda. You can go fishing, you can chop down trees, you can capture, bugs, you can raise animals, or you can skulk through dungeons, you can hunt monsters, you can fight, you can learn magic. And you can do all of this online with your friends, either in your world or theirs. It has drop-in, drop-out co-op, which for the 3DS and especially for 2014 is just amazing. It's a cute, heartwarming game, and it contains something for everyone. Since so many people seem not to have tried this game or given it its fair shake, I just want to show you what all the jobs you can get are. You can be an angler, a tailor, a miner. I'm not going to read them all, but you can see there's a variety of different jobs, and some of these clearly aren't combat-oriented. I mean, you can be a freaking cook. So the whole point is that you do have like this large overarching quest, and you're supposed to save the world of Riveria, and you have a butterfly or a fairy really that follows you around, and they kind of guide you along the path to saving the world. But if you don't want to do that, that's fine. You can just continue doing other things, and if you want to make your way through the story, you can have your friends come and fight the necessary battles for you. And you can just help them out as they help save your world from evil. So it's just a really amazing little game that really didn't get the attention it deserved, and that's why I'm nominating it for Game of the Year. Thank you.
All right.
Nice job, Steve.
Nicely done.
The sample text really convinces me.
It's the attention to detail in these slides that really gets to me. All right, well, let's go and open up the floor to the Q&A portion. Steve, are you ready?
I am.
All right, who wants to start things off here?
I will. So you mentioned all the different classes and how you have some non-combat classes, but you didn't really go into detail about, you say you can cook, you can, do the wood cutting and the blacksmithing and all that stuff. But how exactly, what is that gameplay like? Are you actually going out to get the materials? Is there a mini game involved with actually creating these things? Like, how do they make that interesting over, like, combat, for example?
Sure. So each different job each different creation type job, like cooking, smithing, that type of stuff, has an associated mini game. And you do have to go out into the world to forage for or gather ingredients. So, say you're looking for a particular ore that's right next to a dragon. You might call up one of your friends who's a paladin or a knight and ask them, like, hey, can you kill this dragon for me and bring me back that ore? And, I'll pay you back by making you a set of armor or a sword or something. But when you're making those, you have, like, a rhythm minigame, like timed button presses to make sure you... and the better you do at those, the higher quality product you get out of it. So, and of course, as you do these, you gain levels, or you gain more expertise, so you can learn to craft even better items. So you can level up within each job, and then eventually master that job. But it takes a long time to master even one.
I played Fantasy Life myself, and I found the quests to be a bit tedious. The game's definitely charming, but what do you think about the variety and the quality of all the quests?
I think that they're not for everyone. Like I think as with any game, you're not going to find quests that you 100% enjoy all the time. But I think that's also why the whole point is to bring friends in to help you. So you might have a type of quest that a friend at their specific level and job class is much better at, or can make it easier for you to do. And in my experience, whenever I ran up against something that I maybe didn't want to do alone, I would just invite a friend in that could help me out with it, and it increased my enjoyment of those sections exponentially.
I played Fantasy Life 2, Steve, and I ultimately liked it. I actually reviewed it, but I did feel the pacing was pretty off in the sense that it really takes a while to get going, especially in terms of the overarching story. How do you feel about that? Could you defend that?
Yeah, I think that's intentional because you start out as literally a master of nothing. The whole point of the beginning of the game is to help you find a job you want and get good at it. So, for me, that entailed exploring a bunch of different classes and seeing which one I wanted to be, which I will admit I'm super basic, and I was like, I'm going to be the sword swingy guy. And but ultimately that's what I liked, because a bunch of my friends at the time they didn't want to do those things. So I built up a really nice support structure where I would go out and kill things, bring the materials back, and they would help me craft better weapons so I could go out and kill more things.
All right.
But I think it's intentionally slowly paced.
It sounds like a lot of the enjoyment is dependent on which class you choose and finding one that resonates with you. What if I want to be an Instagram model? What do I do?
You go play Pokemon Snap, you shallow husk of a man.
Steve, defend how the job market seems to be better in this game than in real life.
Oh, man. And that's time.
All right. I believe John is up next.
I believe so. All right. Who is ready for the 2014 Game of the Year?
I mean, we already covered it.
Yeah, exactly. It was Bayonetta. This is easy.
I want none of this back. All right. Who's ready for my 2014 Game of the Year?
Okay, sure.
All right, let's dive in. So, there was a problem. In 2010, this was the result of our Game of the Year showdown, and something was wrong here. Either my colleagues accidentally voted for the wrong game, or they don't fully understand what it means to be Game of the Year. So, to be Game of the Year, you must first be the best game of that year, and because we're looking at it from hindsight, it must be relevant in 2019. So and also have to stand a chance in Game of the Decade, because that's the ultimate goal. So, today I'm bringing a stronger pick. Even though the error of my colleagues, this game's predecessor nearly won 2010. The sequel, though, is better than in every single way. It's consistently brought up in conversation. It's Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, of course.
Should be consistently.
So why, though? Why Tropical Freeze? It has a third pillar. Returns was great from a gameplay perspective and a visual perspective, but the audio was missing something. David Wise! There he is! So first, let's listen to something here. Hope you guys can hear this. This is a beautiful song. Makes me feel optimism. Oh, peace. Beautiful. Oh, determination. Oh, joy. So much emotion from one soundtrack. Some of these are the best levels in any game ever. Look at this. They've taken the silhouette concept from Returns and they've run with it. You're bouncing on jelly, you're racing against a giant octopus, and look at the dynamic camera angles you can get there. There's so much variety in these levels. And there's water levels too. This is something that Returns had, but not quite like this. You can actually swim now. But they go much further than just being able to swim. Levels can go dynamically from land levels to water levels. They can run with it and do sort of minecart underwater levels. There's so much they can do, so they have so many ideas for Tropical Freeze that they couldn't put in Returns. And also, they have so many good ideas. There's a level with Forest Fire where you're running around and putting out flaming fire with these water balloons. There's Sawmill Thrill, where the level's making itself with this sword chasing you. There's a tornado level where you're running around and being caught in the winds. There's an underwater silhouette. Again, they've taken the concept of the silhouette, they've made it even better. And then, what if you're this guy? What if you're this guy who's saying, why aren't the monkey animals riding other animals? Where would they even put them? There are 3 Rambi levels in the entire game, and the game itself has so many ideas of Donkey Kong alone. To put more animals in there is shoehorning them in. They don't need them. There's already enough variety with just Rambi alone. And it turns 2D into a spectacle. People want Nintendo's Uncharted, and I'm saying, it's already here. This is it. There is so much variety to the set pieces, and unlike Uncharted, it's better, because you're actually interacting with them. With Uncharted, they're mostly scripted. In Tropical Freeze, you're running from a giant cheese wheel, you're jumping from some collapsing buildings. The set pieces are way more interactive, and I feel like if you took the camera out of the level and went into the background, you would see this, because the world is so alive. And of course, there's cohesive themes too, that the stakes are high, you're winning back DK Island. There's contextual progression as well. Each level moves into the next one, and this guy here, when he hits you, when you run into him, he hits you back. A Goomba does not hit you back. There's Dixie Kong. There's incentive to kill 100% a level because the levels are just too good, and let's just play this. No! That's the ending.
Well, luckily we have a rule that grants explicit permission for anything David Wise related, so...
Nicely done.
Yeah, well done.
All right, good job, John, presenting your game of 2014, even if you're objectively wrong about the game of 2011 or 2010. My bad. All right, are you ready to be grilled?
I think so. I'm ready for anything.
All right, are you? Okay, because there is one explicit lie in this whole presentation, and that is the incentive to 100% this game. Because while the level design is obviously fantastic, the secrets are very much less so, John. In fact, I would say it was a step back from even the original trilogy, in which there was a clear progression in terms of getting secrets and the rewards. Here, not only are the rewards not that great, depending on the secrets you're finding, but the bonus rooms especially are a huge drag. What do you have to say about that, and the fact that they actively interrupt the flow of the game?
Okay, well, I think let's first focus on the Kong letters. So you're playing through these levels because they're so much fun, and you want more of them, and the Kong letters enable that. So you're going back through the levels again, getting the Kong letters.
I reclaim my time. Forget the Kong letters. Defend the puzzle pieces.
Okay, fine, puzzle pieces. Most of their locations are rather obvious, and while I will say that they do interrupt the flow of the levels because they're very repetitive, I think it's very easy to avoid them. And the actual rewards you get from the puzzle pieces themselves aren't really worth it. So I think it's very easy to just pretend they don't exist because you don't need to go for them.
But you said 100% though.
Yeah, I meant 100%ing all the levels, playing every level there is in the game. But if you want to go for the puzzle pieces, you can, but it is a step down in quality, yeah.
John, I think this game kind of is detrimental to Diddy Kong. Like, he was the big, the buddy of Donkey for how long, and now he's kind of worthless. We have Dixie. She's just plain better Diddy Kong at this point. And even then, Cranky, I think, has more worth than Diddy. So I defend the fact that Diddy is basically worthless in this game.
I think Diddy Kong's there for Diddy Kong fans, because of course you can play this in co-op as well, and if you're a Diddy fan, you can play as Diddy. But yeah, you are right, Dixie Kong basically is a much better version of Diddy. She has more vertical height, and Cranky Kong's better for speedruns because he carries his momentum in his bounces. So yeah, Diddy is... I think the best thing is you can choose your power-ups. You're never forced to choose Diddy, but if you want Diddy, you can have Diddy.
Alright, I know, for me, John, I of course love this game, but I know that there's the most difficult levels in this game felt unfair and kind of slapdash in a way that the temple levels in DKCR did not. I really felt that those were really a lot better, very difficult levels. Can you defend kind of some of the in-game secret levels? And I didn't think they were great.
I never found them unfair. I think it's good for secret levels to be challenging though, because of course you've played through the game, you've played everything there is to see. And I think it's good to have something that properly challenges you. And I don't feel like any of them really put anything that you couldn't react to. Like, you certainly probably would die a couple of times because they are hard, but they're not unfairly hard. They always telegraph what's going to come up next, I feel. So yeah, I actually quite admired the difficulty.
John, you didn't say it here, but one of your favorite things about Tropical Freeze is how grounded it feels. How do you feel about the fact that the final reward for this game, the final set of stages, completely abandon that philosophy and feature floating platforms all over the place?
They just kind of ran with the ideas at that point, I think. I feel like the majority of the game is completely grounded. All the platforms make sense in the context of the level. But yeah, with the final one, I think they just wanted to have fun and just put something in there that just fully embraced the mechanics of Tropical Freeze.
Is that worth the trade-off of abandoning the entire philosophy of the game?
Yes.
And time.
All right. Good job, John.
All right, well done.
Good old Tropical Freeze.
Nicely done.
All right. So I believe, is it Ash next? Then?
Ash.
Yeah.
It's me now.
Yep.
All right. Are you ready,
All right.
sir?
I'm ready to go. All right,
take it
so,
away.
Game of the Year 2014. On the day we recorded 2013, my buddy John, sat up in his bed and said, what should I do today? I know, slander my good buddy Ash Paulson with lies about hating fun character designs, and he's not even going to see it coming. This is going to be hilarious. And the water droplets on this template represent the tears I shed while putting this together. You hurt me, John. You hurt me. But it's okay. It's fine. Because my 2014 Game of the Year could fill a whole 184-page art book with fun, fresh character designs. In fact, it already has. So steal thy shovel, because my 2014 Game of the Year is about to deliver justice in spades. I am, of course, talking about Shovel Knight. Of course. So, why Shovel Knight? Well, let's dig in. Now, it's true, indie platformers emulating the 8-bit style are a dime a dozen these days. You can see them everywhere. But Shovel Knight doesn't just draw inspiration from one of those games, but many of them. And, of course, just before we move on, look at these guys. These guys are the definition of fun, fresh, memorable character designs. But yes, so Shovel Knight doesn't just draw from one amazing NES or 8-bit game, it draws from several. You got Mega Man's precise controls, jump physics, and sharp level design. You've got DuckTales' pogo bouncing. You've got Castlevania's sub-weapon. You've got even Zelda 2's really satisfying squishy hit physics and those number pop-ups, even in the exact same font if you're a Zelda 2 fan. And finally, of course, you've got Super Mario Bros. 3's iconic world map design. Now, groundbreaking innovation. Now, John was right. Rayman had the right idea by treating the live system as a relic of the past. That's where it belongs. Go away, lives. We don't need you. However, Shovel Knight does take that one brilliant step further, the checkpoint system. It's all about risk versus reward, and it's completely in the hands of the player. So there are tons of checkpoints throughout levels, at least enough to where you never have to go back too far if you die. But look at this screenshot. You see that green little jewel in there? You can break the checkpoint and collect the loot inside to get more loot if you want, but every checkpoint you break doesn't work anymore, so it won't save you if you die. So in that way, the difficulty of Shovel Knight is always in the player's hands, and it's only NES hard if you want it to be. Otherwise, it's a fairly forgiving game. And I think that's brilliant, because you can take that risk and get more treasure if you want, or you can play it safe and maybe take longer to buy things, but at least you don't have to go back too far if you die. It doesn't bury form over function. John, you were also right when you talked about the importance of silhouettes. Especially 8-bit character silhouettes need to be recognizable at a glance. And look at these guys, look at this cutscene. The silhouettes of every Shovel Knight character speak for themselves. You're not going to confuse Propeller Knight for Spectre Knight, for the Enchantress, for Mole Knight. They all stand out so much by themselves. It has depth to spare. Now, Andre, I want you to pay attention to this. It's lighthearted and has humor. There's even a character dedicated entirely to puns. Look at that top screenshot, Andre. Love it. Internalize it. However, it isn't afraid to get heavy and turn up the drama when the occasion calls for it. Look at this bottom screenshot. I know Derek knows what I'm talking about with Shovel Knight trying to catch Shield Knight. So it is really, really quite perfect in that sense. And in closing, really, Thanos said it best. Shovel Knight is perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Nice.
And that's what I got.
All right, you ready to be grilled now?
I am.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Who wants to kick things off here
Well,
for questioning Ash?
I appreciate you, Ash, for saying that I was right so often in that presentation. But also, do you find that the greatest parts of Shovel Knight are derivative of other games, and is that a problem?
I don't think it's derivative. I think, as I said, that it borrows from several of the best games, of yesteryear, but improves upon those things as well. It doesn't just emulate; it iterates on them. And the good example of that is, as I said, the checkpoint system, where it was based on all these great games from the NES, but those games were too punitive. Whereas now the game difficulty is in the control of the player, and the game is only NES hard if you want it to be. That was not something that you could choose back in the 80s. So yes, it does borrow from various different games, but I think if you're inspired by something, it's good to borrow from things that are good. But iterate on them, and that's what Shovel Knight does.
As John said, being part of the Game of the Decade, we need to look back as, the decade and how they've kind of viewed as time goes on. And, Shovel Knight is very popular. So popular to the point that he appears in everything. And I think that's led to a little bit of people getting tired of him. And what do you say to that? Like, how do you argue your point to people who are just sick of this guy showing up in everything?
I think you're speaking for too many people, Derek. I think you're only speaking for yourself. Who could get tired of this guy? Come on. I mean,
I'm
I think
tired of
you
him.
said it's important but I think it's important to look at this in the context of the year that Shovel Knight was released, right? Mm-hmm. He was not everywhere, obviously, when he released. And look at it the other way. The reason Shovel Knight is everywhere is because he is one of the most enduring, iconic indie game characters. In fact, I'd say he is the most iconic, memorable indie game character next to Shantae. He's right up there with Shantae. So, yes, of course, the more places in which a character appears, you're going to get a little tired of them. But I also think that's kind of a strange thing to criticize a character and its game for, because the reason it appears everywhere is because so many people love it. It's because it was impactful. So, if anything, I'd say your question is arguing for just how, tremendously impactful Shovel Knight was in the indie game scene.
So, a bunch of the games it put up that offered inspiration to Shovel Knight, such as I believe it was Mega Man, DuckTales, Zelda 2. These are all characters that took themselves seriously. Shovel Knight, however, is a joke. He is a knight that fights with a shovel. Is that an issue, that Shovel Knight inherently doesn't take itself seriously, but is more of a joke character that just happens to star in a platformer that was based on more serious protagonists?
Well, I think I just identified someone who has not played through all of Shovel Knight, because as I said in my presentation, the idea, of course, right when you first see Shovel Knight, yeah, it's a bit of a joke because he's got, a shovel as a weapon. He says, for chivalry, shovel justice, all that. But it belies a very well-balanced game in terms of its humor and tone. Yeah, it's funny, it's wacky, it's ridiculous, what the hell are you looking at? But if you play it, it really does get heavy. But not in like an emo, like it's too heavy sense, but in a, it just makes you feel warm inside. Like it's got a nice little message, it's a nice little story, and it's not just played for jokes. But you love jokes. As I said, I made that screenshot for you, Andre. There is a character dedicated to puns. But no, Shovel Knight at its heart is actually he's a sympathetic character, and the story he goes through is sympathetic. It's not always happy. It's actually kind of tragic sometimes.
You've got 10 seconds.
Okay.
Ash, how do you reconcile what your previous defense with the inclusion of the butt code?
And time.
Nice. Perfect.
Didn't even try.
Perfectly timed.
Alright, nice job, Ash.
Thanks.
Okay.
Well done. Yeah, good job, Ash.
Thank you. I was so excited for that when I was like, I can't wait to call John out for his rude comment.
And that's the end of our 2014 Game of the Decade debate. So we're off to go vote. And you should go vote too using the link in the description below. Remember, your votes count as if you are a 6th Game Explained member. So make sure to check back tomorrow to see who won 2014, along with our debate of which game from 2015 could be our Game of the Decade. Hey, if you click that subscribe button and ring the bell, you'll be notified as soon as the video's up. And with that, we'll see you tomorrow.